1967 was truly a transformative year in the history of the United States. It was the summer of love in San Francisco and social unrest during the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement. The Beatles released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and Jimi Hendrix's debut album, Are You Experienced?, hit the airwaves. The Green Bay Packers defeated the Kansas City Chiefs in what was to be known as the first Super Bowl. 1967 was also one of the most important years in the history of then Campbell College, now Campbell University. Cordell Wise joined his high school teammate Ken Faulkner on the Fighting Camel basketball team on his way to becoming a two-time All-American. And Cordell Wise was also the first African-American student to enroll at Campbell. A South Jersey standout, Cordell led the Camels to 60 victories over his 3 seasons after transferring from Temple and was capped by a berth in the NAIA National Tournament. After graduation, his career path took him through playing basketball, teaching and coaching, working in an Atlantic City casino, finance, and then into the world of tennis, where he ran programs and taught for 2 decades. My name is Stan Cole, class of 1987, and this is our next installment of Tales from the Creek, where we visit with people who have made this place special over the years. I'm delighted today to be joined by Cordell Wise. Welcome to Tales from the Creek, Cordell, and thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Well, Stan, thank you for having me.
Cordell, I always start with this, but how did all this get started? What was it like growing up in South Jersey and coming up in the age of the 60s?
Well, as I had alluded to before, my parents escaped from the Jim Crow South. My mother was from the Chesapeake area. My father was from North Carolina. I don't even know where. And their life was built around survival at that time. My mother had 5 kids. Mm-hmm. Their father died in a car accident. My father came back from the Second World War, 1947, and ended up marrying my mother. I was born in 47. So I'm one of the ultimate baby boomers. And what happened at that point, Riverside was a small 1 square mile blue collar town. And when I was maybe 7 or 8, my father took me to this the gymnasium and said, "See if you like this game." There was a guy that ran PAL basketball, and he taught all of us from elementary school all the way up to junior high school. His name was Bob Vernon. Mm-hmm. We called him Pop Vernon. The whole town, I mean, he was probably one of the greatest men I ever known, and that's how I got into basketball. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize I had a little talent, and as I grew older, it started to come out.
You've mentioned in the past, and talking with some of your friends growing up, it was neighborhood. You had different places to play. Ken Faulkner and his brother or cousin were friends with y'all, and Riverside in the 60s. It seemed like it was a great place where you had plenty of playmates to play and with.
Well, Riverside was basically a basketball town. Mm-hmm. They had Bob Vernon, who went here when this was a junior college. He went to Campbell as a junior college, transferred to Duke. Duke. And his father is the one that taught. That's the connection. His father taught us so. So as time went on, Bob would, as I was growing up, Bob would enter into summer leagues and have me play on his team, just to get some experience playing, and which was very helpful. And there are other people from Riverside that went here too. Harry Johnston, Bernie Smith, Sam Bishop. Yeah, I think Kenny Faulkner and I might have been the last 2 Riversidians to play basketball here.
Cordell, going back to when you were coming up, who were some of your favorite players? Did you have anybody you kind of patterned your game after?
Not to pattern my game, but I used to love to watch the Boston Celtics. They played a running style, even though pro basketball is a running game, but they ran better than anybody else. Bill Russell, Sam Jones, Casey Jones, Havlicek. I mean, they were the mainstays of the day.
You mentioned Bob Vernon, Bob Vernon that we know from here. His father who introduced the
Right.
game to you. Who are some of the other people that influenced you along the way that helped you get where you are?
Well, when I first went to Temple, my high school coach, Doug Frambies, he was not an athlete. He'd never played the game, but he was a good motivator, and because it was a basketball town, we all learned how to set a pick and roll, which is a lost art today. Kids set the pick and they don't even make contact. You know, when you come off a pick, you should come shoulder to shoulder, rubbing the man off. But now the guard just dribbles willy-nilly wherever he wants, and we learned to do it properly, which helped me later on. And then after in high school, I averaged 20 points and 20 rebounds a game. And guy had offers from most of the schools in Philadelphia, a lot of schools in North Jersey. I also played football. Joe Paterno offered me a scholarship. I was offered Tubby Raymond at Delaware offered me a scholarship because I was a receiver, and those were passing schools at that time. So, pursuant to that, going to Temple, Harry Litwack was the coach. Mm-hmm. He had me work for him during the summer in a summer camp, and I worked in the kitchen as a dishwasher. I had to pull dishes out of this dishwasher at 180 degrees. I mean, you had to do it quickly. And I wanted to wear gloves to do it, but the other people that were experienced said, no, the gloves will just make it worse. You burn your hands. So while I was there, Harry would take me during my off period and refine my shot. And he told me, he said, you got to shoot 500 shots a day. And being the idiot that I was, I followed his directions. So that's what I did. I would just go out and shoot until my arm cramped up, go back and rest, go back and shoot again. And it got to the point where I didn't, even at Campbell, I missed very few open shots. I mean, the points that I averaged, I was more into trying to meld the team to play together because, after leaving Temple, just a side note, the team that I left at Temple ended up winning the NIT. If we had all stayed together, we could have done damage in the NCAAs. And when I was at Campbell, I only averaged about 14 shots a game. One game I took, I think, 19, but I shot 16 for 19. I had 41 points. So, which was not my goal. I mean, I didn't want to score 50, 60 points against Methodist and Pembroke, UNC, Greensboro. I mean, that was pointless. In fact, I didn't even like playing those teams. I wanted to get the real meat,
Absolutely. You mentioned the South Jersey connection to Campbell. How did you really did you become aware of Campbell from Bob Vernon?
I had known people that, Bob Vernon used to talk about it, and I had Harry Johnston and Bernie Smith. Harry Johnston taught me anatomy and physiology in high school. Bernie Smith taught me history. And when I was at Temple, I went to a high school game at Riverside, and at that point I was waiting for my grades from Temple, and they didn't turn out too well. And I told one of the teachers, and he told the Campbell alums, and I get a call from Coach Fred McCall, and I ended up catching a Trailways bus. Packed my bags, caught a Trailways bus, which must have stopped at every stop on the East Coast to get down here. And I get down to meet Coach McCall, and he tells me, he says, you can be a big fish in a little sea, which I wasn't even really worried about. My main worry at that time was Vietnam had started, and they had a lottery system for the draft. My lottery number was 103. So I knew if I didn't keep a 2S status, I was going to be 1A and drafted. And I got into Campbell, and that was it.
What are some of your best memories from being down here, Cordell, and when you were here your 3 years?
Well, I was talking to the guys I played with, Johnny Marshbanks, Ken Faulkner, Jim Wakes. We got better every year that we played. And Coach McCall coached me for 1 year and a half a year. Then he gave it to Danny Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in those days, we didn't know anything about there were a lot of teams we played we didn't know anything about because there wasn't any computer, there wasn't any internet. You know, you couldn't trade films like they did later or DVDs. And Coach Roberts was the only coach. He didn't even have an assistant. So we had to learn by experience. And my junior year, the first that was the first time we were eligible to play for District 29 championship, and we played Elizabeth City. And I figured, well, this is our chance. I had 33 points, and they beat us. The next year, it was like collectively a switch went on for all of us. We played them again in Fayetteville. We played a different game. We didn't try to run with them. I only had 19, but we beat them and went to the national championship.
Cordell,
national finals.
Cordell, the teams didn't play 35 games, 32 regular season games.
No.
The 20 wins was the gold standard for a college basketball team's success by measure of wins and losses. And your team won 60 over 3 years.
Yeah.
I can do that math with my comm degree. What made those teams so successful, Cordell?
Well, for one thing, we had Jim Wakes, Ken Faulkner, Alan McRae, and myself. We had played together. We had played together for at least 2 years, and we got to know. We got to know each other, and we got to, as I said, we got to know other teams. And my thing was, I got double teamed a lot. So basic math is there's only 5 people on the team. So if 2 people aren't me, somebody's got to be open. And so I did a good bit of passing too, because not like today. You see guys get double teamed and they want to, everybody wants to prove they can get in the NBA, but unfortunately, there's not enough room for everybody.
Absolutely. Who are some of the best players you played with and played against?
Well, in basketball camp, we had Pete Maravich. There was George Lehman that went here also. He went here when it was a junior college. Mm-hmm. He ended up going to Wake Forest afterwards. Van Williford came from NC State. So we used to have 2-on-2 games, me and George against Van Williford and Pete Maravich. And, George and Pete really never got along, but that's another story. And later it was Dickie Walker from Wake Forest. Mm-hmm. Then I used to work at basketball camp at Davidson. And my junior year, I get to campus early and couldn't find. I was in a dorm. I knew which dorm we were staying in, but I couldn't find the lights for the dorm. So I felt along the wall, and I found this. It was a TV room. Still couldn't find the lights, but I found out how to turn the TV on. And I'm sitting in this room, and all of a sudden in the hallway, I hear clip, clop, clip, clop. And I don't know what's going on, whether it's somebody coming to check on me or what. And then there was a little bit of light in the doorway, and all that light got blotted out. And the guy comes in and says, "Hey, how you doing, man?" It was Dave Cowens.
Holy cow.
So we became friends after that. And, we used to play one-on-one. And then, he was 6'10", but he was proportioned like me. And he was as quick as me. So I couldn't really drive it. I would have to, those long shots, I would have to back all the way up past the three-point line to make a shot on him and make him come out. Because if I just drove from the top of the key, he was so quick he could catch me. And we had some good games.
And what a circle of life there! You grow up a fan of the Russell-led Lakers with Havlicek, and then Cowens wins the '74 championship with Havlicek, right?
And to show you what a worker he was, before I say that, he went home with me because they were ineligible. Florida State was ineligible because of recruiting violations. Mm-hmm. They could have won the NCAA, hands down. Just because of him. And plus they had a lot of other talent. There was a guy from East Orange, New Jersey, Kenny Macklin, that played for him. So he said, can I ride home with you and you can take me to East Orange? And we went up there and played a game. His friend Kenny Macklin set up a game. There was 7-footers from North Jersey, New York. Dave was the only white guy on the court. I mean, he destroyed everybody. So, I mean, he was unbelievable. And then when he went to the NBA, because he was actually an undersized center, he had to learn how to shoot a 15-foot jumper, which obviously everybody knows he did. And,
absolutely.
And that's why the Celtics did what they did. And when I was at Davidson, guys from the western part of the state had heard about me. We got a call. This guy Dave Kroll that played at Davidson comes up to me one day and says, somebody wants you to come play a pickup game. I said, who is it? He said, Bob McAdoo. So I went over to a pickup game with Bob McAdoo, Artis Gilmore, and we played for a couple of hours, and that was it. And then the last year I worked at Davidson, Charlie Scott was there, and Charlie and I developed a pretty good relationship.
Since 2008, Campbell's competed in a state-of-the-art 3,000-seat arena. We just watched a game there this afternoon. But Carter Gym was the home for Campbell basketball for 55 years before that, and your home for your home court. Tell us what that building was like on game night and not on game night.
Well, not on game night. Obviously, we practiced. Sometimes Coach McCall would, recruiting wasn't as sophisticated as it is now. No computers, and Coach McCall would find out about some players. We'd have practice. He would have us go eat at Marshbank's cafeteria, and then come back and play again with these recruits. Which I guess in a way was good because it was getting us in better shape. But during game nights, the place was pretty electric. I mean, it only sat barely 1,000, and we packed it every night. So, it was like you said, my second home, and we worked in basketball camp there. Every summer before basketball camp, they had the parquet floor. The blocks like this, like they used to have in the Boston Garden.
Right.
It got so hot that the parquet floor would buckle up, and they had to take it down. They had to take it up and redo it every summer. And by basketball camp, it was done. But and because when I first got down here, Coach McCall had me shoot in the gym, and he was telling me how great my technique was. So which I didn't pay attention to. I just thought, I worked on it. I know I'm a good shooter. So George Lehman, who was probably one of the greatest shooters ever to play the game, he and I taught shooting in Carter Gym. That's the only gym I ever taught in during basketball camp was Carter.
And George's a relationship with the Campbell basketball school lasted for decades, and came through here. And then Austin, his brother, came through as well. And that was the one thing that we've talked about through the years with people discussing the basketball school, was it really was something that really focused on fundamentals whatever station you were, whether it's defensive slides or your shooting release or passing. Kids weren't just going to be babysat; they were going to have fun, but they were coming to learn.
They had to work, and George would be at one end, I'd be at the other, and the kids would rotate, and it was an enjoyable experience. You got to meet kids from elementary all the way up to high school. And funny you mentioned that about fundamentals. When I met Cowens, I told you I learned how to come off a pick.
Mm-hmm.
Cowens obviously had the same training, but he was 6'10", 250 pounds. So the first time we played in a counselor game at Davidson, he and I were playing together. I throw him the ball, I go off a pick, and I'm figuring I'm going to have to do some more dribbling, right? I go off the pick, and it was quiet. I'm looking here, nobody. He wiped my man. So I just had a summer just shooting open gym shots.
the immovable object, absolutely, that you ran your man into.
Yeah.
Cordell, it's well documented, All-American honors in basketball at Campbell, the success the team here had. But you also competed in the NAIA National Track and Field Championship. I'd love for you to share with our listeners about how your college track career got started.
That wasn't, I didn't have any intention of running track. I guess it was my sophomore year, they had a flag football league was started. And as I told you, I was a receiver in high school. I was pretty fast. So the first team we played, this guy that was playing with me, I never met him, but he could throw passes. So, I'm running, catching. I must have had like 3 or 4 touchdowns. So one touchdown I'm running for is one of the teachers is going by, Cliff Hood. He calls me over and says, did you ever run track? I said, yeah. I ran 100 and 220 in high school, which it was in, not meters, 100-yard dash, 220-yard dash. So he said, I need a sprinter. I said, well, I'll come out, but I don't know if I'm going to come to practice too much. He said, that's all right. I just need somebody to sprint. So I actually I guess I pretty much got into shape in the meets, because I would run the 100, 220, and then a leg on the quarter mile. And I had learned to run the quarter mile in high school and how to pace myself with it. So without training, I ran a 9,800, 20.8, 220, which was the second fastest time in the nation in my senior year in NAIA. And then I ran about a 48, 440. So.
Most of our coaches now who might be listening to that will not agree to having somebody come to the team and only competing in the events and not having to practice. But sometimes talent you can't teach that either.
As I said, that was not my reason for coming to Campbell to run track.
Absolutely. Cordell, you mentioned meeting Charlie Scott at Davidson and developing a friendship with him. You and Charles are certainly notable names in this state and in this region as pioneer players at your schools. Charles at University of North Carolina, you here at Campbell. What kind of significance is that to you as being the first one?
As I told you, my main objective was to stay out of the draft. And when I came to Campbell, I was a little bit apprehensive, but nothing ever happened on this campus racially. And as I told, I was speaking earlier with Johnny Marshbanks, who I played with, and he was very accepting of me, as was the whole team. And John Kennedy stated, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." And I think collectively, what happened, that experience at Campbell, with all of us, I think that advanced the country exponentially.
And I can share for sure a man that came along a few years after you, Sam Staggers. You finished in 1970. Sam arrived in 1973, and Sam shared the fact that he never ran into any problems here.
Right.
And I promise you, Cordell, that has to do with the fact that you and your teammates and your classmates set that standard, and it became the norm to what we have now, the most diverse campus we have ever had at Campbell. And we're grateful for that.
And as an addendum to that, we played Catawba, and some of the guys from Catawba would work at camp. Mm-hmm. One guy, most notably Garland Davis. Mm-hmm. I think it was rumored that Salisbury had a lot of Klan activity. Garland Davis, the first night he slept in the dorm at Catawba, they burned a cross on his lawn. Nothing like that ever happened to Campbell, and I can probably attribute that to the presence of Mr. Fred McCall, because he's the type of individual who wouldn't put up with anything like that.
Our guest on Tales from the Creek is Cordell Wise, class of 1970, basketball All-American and Campbell Hall of Fame member. Cordell, we're going to turn the page here. You have a deep love of music. And I want you to share that with me and your listeners. Growing up in the 1960s, was there a better time to experience an incredibly diverse and creative time in the music industry? Tell us about what that was like and how you developed your love.
Well, when I was younger and in high school, a family moved in next door to me. They had 10 kids, and they moved in when I was 12. And at one time they said, I guess I must have been 13 after a house was built. And they said they invited me to a party. And they would play Motown and dance and everything. And I got used to, everybody was into Motown back then. And when I came to Campbell, I met a guy, Michael Ferguson. He was actually from New Jersey also. He was only from a town 5 miles from me, Pennsauken, New Jersey. And he introduced me to what was then known as psychedelic music, but listened to Jimi Hendrix, the Doors, and it was different music, and it was also, the music was more enchanting than the music that was played before then. And musician-wise, a lot of people that were musicians were, if you really listen to it, it had the basis of rhythm and blues, had the basis of jazz, and formed what now is called rock. And
you shared with me earlier that you've seen Led Zeppelin in concert in the late 60s. Half of that group is no longer with us. What was that like when you went to see Zeppelin?
Yeah, that was on the bill was Led Zeppelin, Jethro Tull, and Sly and the Family Stone. Sly, for some unknown reason, didn't show up, for which he was known for. But it was in what's called the Spectrum in Philadelphia, and it was on a circular stage, and the stage rotated. And we were all just there with our mouths open the whole time. That was, that's when they became known as the super groups. And they were certainly one of those at that time.
All right, quick little Q&A here. Best Led Zeppelin song for you?
I've been dazed and confused for so long, it's not so. Wanted a woman, never bargained for you. Lots of people talking, few of them know. Soul of a woman was created below.
Okay, I've got my coworker, Jason Williams, is a big guitar guy, and we shared a text thread last night that he says that When the Levee Breaks is a perfect song.
Yeah.
And so we had that back and forth. I'll just chime in. I really love Houses of the Holy album, and the Rain song is very deep, means a whole lot to me. Hendrix. What matters most?
Well, first of all,
yes.
With Zeppelin, you guys came along later.
Right.
I was, the first album, Led Zeppelin, was a bluesier album, which they copied a lot of the blues artists, from the past. And but Hendrix, musically, it was when I heard Purple Haze, it was like, how's he doing? And as time went on, he was proved to be one of the greatest guitarists ever. Yeah.
I understand that you traveled to Woodstock in the summer of 1969. Yeah. Tell me about that trip.
That was in between Davidson basketball camp, and I told Dave Cowens about it when we you had to go in July to a session and another session in August, and Woodstock was in August of '69, and I went with the individual that you met earlier today, my friend Cliff McGlotton. He was home from the Army. He was stationed in Germany. And we were just sitting listening to a radio with two other guys from the neighborhood. And it was a station out of Philadelphia, WMMR. And they talked about this festival in New York. And we were sitting in my mother's car, and I said, "Well, I'm going to go home and ask if I can take the wicked truck," which we did. And we rode up, and we rode up, and it was just wall-to-wall traffic. And we slept in somebody's yard. People were just pulling over into people's yards. We slept in the car overnight in somebody's yard. And the next day we found out, it was so crowded they weren't letting any more people. We could hear the bass from the concert, but we didn't get to see any music. Saw a baby being born out in a tent on the side of the road. But that was, and there was a car going out. You had to go back to the New York Thruway. Going out, there was a car in front of us, and people were hanging off of this car, and this woman is hitching, so we stopped to pick her up. She was from Manhattan. And we said, "What's going on with that car?" She said, "That guy has a duffel bag of marijuana." And people were
They were trying to get in.
yeah. They were buying it from him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he said, "Oh, okay." We just proceeded out of there and took her home, and that was it.
Cordell, after you graduated, you were drafted by the Carolina Cougars in the ABA. Tell us a little bit about that experience in that time.
Yeah, well, as I told you, I was from a small town in New Jersey. I knew nothing about business, especially basketball as a business. I played because I loved the game. And I had honed my skills to the point where, if you didn't put two people on me, I'm going to score. And we had Bones McKinney and Jerry Steele, who had coached at High Point, were the coaches. Bones McKinney had coached at Wake Forest. He was a very well-known coach. Mm-hmm. And I was working for the Cougars during the summer. They had a van with a basket on it, and you would take it into different neighborhoods and do drills and exhibitions. And, I was working with Jerry Kroll from Davidson, mm-hmm. and then later another guy from New Jersey. But they called us in one day because they wanted us to play against some of the veterans in Y in Raleigh. And one of the veterans was George Wilson. I don't know if you remember who he was. Cincinnati Bearcats, George Wilson and Ron Thacker. Mm-hmm. They had won 2 NCAA championships in a row and played Loyola Chicago, I believe, in 1961. Mm-hmm. And it was a triple overtime game. Les Hunter from Loyola tapped in the winning shot. George Wilson was one of the guys that was playing, and he comes up to me and says, "You're definitely going to make it. Nobody can do what you can do." Which at the time I had no idea what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. So we come into camp. I blow through rookie camp. The veterans come in, and Bones McKinney and Jerry Steele call each of us into a room individually. And like I said, I know nothing about business. And Bones said to me, he says, "We don't believe players go stale." And I said, "Okay." And what he was alluding to was, I had a couple bad days because they had us doing push-ups, mm-hmm. which is not the thing you want to do in the middle of camp. You lift in the off season.
Right.
You're not going to get in shape in 2 days by doing push-ups. So I didn't know what he was talking about. He figured, I wasn't playing the way I'd played before because I wanted more money. I knew nothing about negotiating a contract or anything. So, I'm just shaking my head, and I leave that meeting. So we start exhibition season, and we go. I forget where we played, but Bob Verga was, he had showed up. George Lehman, who had gone here, he showed mm-hmm. up, and I'm playing Bob Verga. His first 2 shots, I blocked, threw into the stands, and the next day I was gone. I was cut. So.
It is a business.
Yeah, it's a business. That's right.
Cordell, you went on to play in the Eastern Basketball League, and people of a certain age, myself included, remember just how incredible that league was at that time. Share with us a little bit about that. People don't know because there was not cable TV. There wasn't coverage outside of the area.
Yeah, there were. As everybody knows, there's not room in the NBA for everybody. So. Mm-hmm. But there are, there's still players that play. They had a league in the Midwest, and the Eastern League had a lot of players that played for major schools, and we're playing. It was called semi-pro basketball because you would play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sometimes just Saturday and Sunday. And it was a rough and tumble league. I mean, one guy, I went to a tryout in Hazleton one time, and this guy, I think he had played for some university near there, some Division II university, and he comes out and he's trying all these things, and this one guy, Kenny Wilburn, who had played for Wilberforce, we're on the foul line. A guy shooting a foul shot, and Kenny leans over to this guy and says, "What do you think you're doing out here? Don't you know there's grown men out here?" So, you didn't. I mean, there's no secret who the baddest cat in the jungle was. I mean, right. There were guys that were extremely strong. And,
Cordell, your professional journey has taken you to teaching and coaching, the world of finance, Atlantic City casinos, and the sport of tennis. Share a little bit about a few of the stops along the way.
Yeah, well, I think as I told you in the casino, I was a John Updike character in a Dashiell Hammett novel. I did not fit in whatsoever. I mean, it was a lot of you had to fill out about a 50-page questionnaire to get your casino license, and you weren't supposed to have any criminal background. But I don't think that was true. So I lasted there for 3 years, and I went back. I subbed for a little bit, and I ended up going to Hilton Head, and I took a couple of tennis drills, and I meet this guy. He worked for this company called Edward Jones, and he told me about the company, and I ended up applying. And first. Before that, I worked for a penny stock firm, and they were just rip-off artists. I had gotten my Series 7 license. The Series 7 is a 6-hour test, and extremely hard test. I mean, you have to learn about options and everything. And worked for them for a while, and then I went to Hilton Head, that's right, and I met this guy. He tells me about this company. Now, I already had my license, so I called up Edward Jones. They scheduled an interview, hired me on the spot. Edward Jones sets up one broker offices. It's just the broker, and they give you a secretary, but they call her branch office. It can be a he or her. Call them a branch office administrator. So I did that for approximately 5 or 6 years, and realized that I would have retirement coming up soon. So I had money in my teacher's pension annuity fund. I went back into teaching, and right now I have full medical, full dental, and a pension. So,
tell us
which came from my Campbell degree.
Absolutely, full circle again, right?
Yeah.
Cordell, tell us about how you go from basketball standout, part-time track national participant, broker, and then you get involved in the sport of tennis.
Yeah, well, when I was playing in the Eastern League, there was a family in this town, Willingboro. It's I don't know if you know anything about Levitt communities, but there's Levittown, New York, and Willingboro used to be called Levittown, but to not get confused with Levittown, New York, they changed the name. And there was a retired officer, Air Force officer in town. I had met him through a guy I had gone to Temple with. He went with his daughter. So they had a son. He was I guess you could say he was a prodigy. I mean, he picked up things. I mean, this kid could throw the football 70 yards. He swam. They had local swim teams. There were 10 parks. He swam for his park and beat everybody. The kid was phenomenal. So once, I used to go to the house a lot, and he told me he started playing tennis. So it started in September, and the high school team went indoors and practiced, and he had to learn how to hit the ball, which is not an easy thing in tennis. I mean, it's like I told you I did 500 times a day in basketball. You have to do the same thing in tennis, and he ends up from September to the time the boys' season starts in April, he ends up being the number one player on the team. So he taught me how to hit a tennis ball. And he told me, he said, don't play, because if you start playing, you're just going to bat the ball back and forth. You're just going to try to win points. You're not going to learn it. And you meet people that can hit the ball, it's not going to work. So he made me, learn how to hit it. It took me like maybe 3 weeks to learn how to hit a backhand properly and a forehand. And after that, I started taking a couple courses. I ended up taking USPTA, U.S. Tennis Professional Association test, and I became certified. And I ran the courts in Willingboro for about 10 years.
So a lot of people probably think that tennis pro, golf pro, glamour job, you go in and whenever you want to. What does the average person really not know about what being a tennis pro is?
Tennis pro, I worked at Sea Pines most recently with Stan Smith. And Stan Smith runs the Stan Smith Academy out there. Mm-hmm. But I worked with in fact, the young guy that ran it, that was the head pro, O'Keefe, he played for Coastal Carolina. He played against Campbell when they were still in the same league. And in 90-degree weather, 100-degree weather, doesn't matter. You got to be out there. And you might be out there for 3.5, 4, 5 hours. And it gets to be pretty grueling. But the great part of it is you meet a lot of different people, and I had a serendipitous encounter with a lady. She was from Raleigh, and afterwards, how you talk to people, where are you from? She said, I'm from Raleigh. I said, I went to Campbell University. I graduated from Campbell. She said, I work with one of Coach McCall's daughters. And that, there again, circle comes around again,
It's a small world. I try to tell people that about Campbell, but it might be just because I've been here a long time, but it's amazing how many people you work. And then, it is a smaller world that we live in.
Yes.
Travel, the internet, electronic communication, air flight, interstates, we can go on. Cordell, how's coaching an individual sport like tennis different from coaching a team sport like basketball?
Well, that's a good question. And you said it yourself, Stan, individual. It's an individual sport. Most of the pro tennis players you see are pampered. They have to be. But basketball is a game where you have to be part coach, part psychologist, part parent. It's a different dynamic, because you may have 14 people on the basketball team. And I coached at one of the first places I coached at was, I was playing on the Eastern League team in Trenton, New Jersey. So I started teaching at Trenton, and I became the JV assistant varsity coach. Now, we were ranked in the top 5 in the state every year. And, so you had a pretty good pick of talent. But from the top kid to the bottom kid, I made a kid run a play 60 times one day. And, I'd substitute different kids in and out, but it seemed like it was punishment. But no, what happened is that solidified in their brain. Behavioral science question: how many days does it take to develop a habit?
Isn't it 14?
No. 30 days.
Oh, wow.
Proven fact. If you can force yourself to do something for 30 days, you have put your brain on automatic pilot. And that's the converse is true too, because you can go the other way and do something wrong for 30 days. Now you've got a bad habit that you've got to spend 30 days trying to break. So, it's and as I said, in a team sport like basketball, everybody from, I don't care if you're a bench sitter. I used to tell my kids, you don't know what's going to happen during the season. Somebody may get hurt. That's your chance. Somebody may get sick. But you have to know what they know if you want to play. And if you don't, and plus when things happen in the game, you had to do quick discipline. You don't, I see coaches today, kids mess up, And the coach just said, "Oh, well, he just messed up. No. Take him out now. Tell him what he did, and then put him back in. Because if you let him keep doing that, that 30 days is going to end up mounting, and he's going to keep doing the same thing." I mean, that's just my opinion. I may be wrong, but
It sounds like a scientific fact to me. Cordell played with McAdoo and Cowens and Charlie Scott, incredible names in basketball. And you worked with an all-time great with Stan Smith, a two-time major winner and a world #1. What's Stan Smith like?
Stan's he's probably one of the most humble men you want to meet, and he's low key, and him and his wife, they go to Wimbledon every year, the French Open, which is his right because that's where he made his living. But he is one of the greatest people you ever want to meet. I mean, sometimes he would be walking by if I'm teaching a group, and he'd say, "Oh, that's Stan Smith." I'd say, "Stan, you have a minute?" He'd come over and he'd talk to him, and funny little anecdote. There's a picture online of when I was working there. It was the brochure for that year, I guess. Mm-hmm. And everybody had to wear the same hat, same shirt, and you had to carry your racket. And Stan is telling us, "All right, everybody, hold your racket like you're a champion." I said, "Stan, wait a minute. You're the only one here that's ever won a major tournament."
You tell us.
Yeah, right.
Cordell, you came back to Campbell last fall when your graduating class was celebrating its golden anniversary, which was delayed because of the COVID pandemic. What was it like being back on campus
great.
in Buies Creek?
Ended up meeting a couple people who I had forgotten about, and we all remembered each other and remembered things that happened on campus, and we reminisced about how the circle used to be there. And how we had to go to chapel, and you had to go to chapel a certain amount of times a week, and attendance was taken. If you didn't, you got the demerits. So that was it was a memorable time.
Earlier today, you joined your former teammates Ken Faulkner and Johnny Marshbanks being enshrined in the Campbell Athletics Hall of Fame. What does that mean to you, Cordell?
Well, it was. Like most of the Hall of Fame recipients said, this is not something that we did to get into the Hall of Fame or to get recognition. We played our sport because we loved the sport. But the fact that Campbell took the time to honor me is, that's deeply felt by me. I mean, as I said, my high school coach used to tell us before each game, what I gave, I have. What I kept, I lost. And I think I put out some things for Campbell. I put out some effort for Campbell, and it's good that Campbell recognizes the effort that I put out.
Finally, Cordell, tell us what Campbell and the Buies Creek community mean to you.
Well, as I said, when I came down here, I didn't know what to expect, and I met some of the finest people I met. I mean, in a lot of ways, the South gets a bad rap. And I don't even know if Kenny Faulkner knows this, but in the town, Kenny lived in a section called Delanco. There was a creek dividing Delanco from Riverside proper. But in Riverside, there was a diner called the Princess Diner. And when I was younger, I remember people talking about it. Blacks were not allowed in that diner. And that was far from being the South. And so that was, and people used to tell me, "Oh, you went to school down in the South. How did you do that?" I said, in the South, if people don't want you around, they will tell you. They're not going to smile in your face. If they don't want you there in those days, they would tell you, don't come in here, or we don't serve, such and such, the N-word. But that never, as I said, nothing like that ever happened on campus. And, I've never heard of anything like that happening on Campbell University's campus.
I'm Stan Cole, and our guest today on Tales from the Creek has been Cordell Wise. Thank you, Cordell, for taking time to share your Tales from the Creek.
Thank you, Stan, for having me.